Welcome to the channel, BL Stories, where you'll find emotional, romantic, and heart-touching tales. It was a rainy day, Tuesday. Vivaan came in from a distance carrying a glass of Café Sama with his hoodie on. His mood was as dull as the weather. He had to complete an assignment, and all he needed was a corner. He considered getting coffee, but all he needed was peace. But as he looked toward the counter, his attention was riveted. Behind the counter was a man. Dusky skin, soft features, dark hair falling in a light fringe over his forehead. His every movement was calm, as if making coffee were an art. His apron bore a small, stitched name, Aarav. He said with a smile, "First time here?" And Vivaan just shook his head. That day, Vivaan forgot his assignment, rain, deadlines, everything. Only one face remained in his memory. Days passed. Café Sama became his ritual. He would come every evening, open a book, sit down, and scroll through his phone. But his eyes always searched for the same person. Sometimes Vivaan would even flirt lightly. One day, he said with a laugh, "You were a model before, weren't you? This is the first time I've seen such a calm face while serving coffee." Aarav simply smiled and said, "No, just coffee." Aarav was kind, but always a little distant, as if he had built an invisible wall around him. One morning, Vivaan arrived at the cafe early. He saw small blue shoes sitting under the counter. He stopped. He thought, whose shoes are these? Just then, Aarav arrived, carrying a lunchbox and a school bag. He looked a little flustered. He simply said, "Special delivery," and went inside. Vivaan was confused. And a few days later, he realized the truth. The cafe was closed, the lights dimmed. Vivaan saw Aarav feeding a small boy sitting on his lap. The child was laughing, holding crayons in one hand, and Aarav was saying something softly to him. Vivaan's heart instantly calmed. He has a son. He turned away. He hadn't come to the cafe for a few days. He couldn't quite figure out what hurt him most, whether the truth was hidden or he had never even considered the possibility. But Vivaan couldn't stay away for long. When he returned to the cafe, Aarav greeted him with a normal smile, as if nothing had happened. But this time, a little boy was drawing behind the counter. The child, curious, asked, "Dad, is this the same chocolate-selling uncle?" Aarav smiled and said, "Yes, Vivaan." Vivaan bent down and said, "Hi, buddy." And the child whispered, "Do you draw too?" That one line stole Vivaan's heart. Now Vivaan started coming to the cafe not just for Aarav, but also for Reyansh, the little boy. They would build paper towers and play silly games. One day, Vivaan brought him dinosaur stickers. The child beamed with joy, as if he had found the moon. And Aarav, slowly, he began to soften. Sometimes he would make coffee for Vivaan without asking. Sometimes, if their fingers brushed, he wouldn't leave quickly. Sometimes, seeing Vivaan with Reyansh, his gaze would stop, tired, emotional, grateful. Then one evening, it was raining. The cafe had closed early. Reyansh was asleep on the beanbag, holding a toy car. The cafe was silent inside. Only the pattering of the rain could be heard. Aarav and Vivaan were sitting at a table, drinking coffee. Vivaan said softly, "I didn't know you had that." Aarav looked into his cup and said, "Most people pull away when they find out." Vivaan looked at Reyansh and said, "He's lucky. He has you." Aarav finally looked at him, vulnerability in his eyes. "I just try. It's not always enough." There was no confession at that moment, just a silence that said, "I understand. I won't run away." As Vivaan was leaving, Reyansh turned over in his sleep and said softly, "I want to hear more of your story, Vivaan uncle." Vivaan smoothed his blankets and said softly, "I'll tell you tomorrow. Promise." And when he looked up, Aarav was standing at a distance, a hidden smile in his eyes. That night, Vivaan was returning home, and he realized love doesn't always come with loud confessions. Sometimes it comes quietly, like the smell of coffee, the hands of an innocent child, and the hidden smile of a man. Chapter 2: Fragrance that lurks quietly. The next few weeks passed like a quiet lake, unseen but always flowing. Vivaan started coming to Café Sama every day, but now it wasn't just Aarav who was the reason. Reyansh was too, the little boy who would wait for him in the morning with sleepy eyes and paint-stained fingers. "Look, Vivaan, uncle, I made a giraffe," he would say happily. And Vivaan couldn't stop smiling. Aarav, from behind the counter, would silently watch them both, and a moment would pass over his face. The smile would stop. Vivaan himself didn't understand when it all started. But now this cafe felt like home to him, coloring with Reyansh, giving away extra napkins, distributing pastries to the school kids, and watching Aarav as he lovingly stroked his son's hair behind his ears. It all just started to feel like his own. One day, the day of the school project arrived. Reyansh made a chart titled "My Family." He also pasted his mother's photo on it. Aarav's voice was slightly broken at that moment, but Vivaan quietly sat beside him. "You're very intelligent, Reyansh," he said, and the child innocently asked, "And when will you join the family?" Aarav looked up at him, and Vivaan's heart stopped beating for a moment. Then one evening, Reyansh was asleep, his head in Vivaan's lap. Aarav sat in front, watching silently. Vivaan said softly, "I was scared. I thought I was feeling something wrong, but now I think I'd like to live in this illusion for a little while longer." Aarav didn't say anything. He just straightened the blanket over Reyansh. His silence had become words at that moment. Then one day, a family picnic arrived. The scooter broke down, so Aarav dialed a number he'd never thought to call. And then, in the picnic park, Reyansh was sitting between them, eating sandwiches and playing with balloons. And then a parent passed by and said, "Cute family." Aarav stopped. Vivaan heard it too, but neither of them corrected him. Time simply stopped. From then on, every little thing changed. Aarav let Vivaan sit behind the counter. He started giving him chocolate biscuits with his coffee. Reyansh stuck Vivaan's drawing on the fridge. All these small things, but it was as if the door to the heart was slowly opening. One night, while closing the cafe, it was raining again. The lights were dim, and standing in front of the window, Vivaan said softly, "I never thought I would want to be a part of someone else's world, but this place is dangerous. I want to come back here again and again." Aarav came and stood very close to her, so close that their shoulders were barely touching, and within the reflection, Aarav's voice rang out a story. "Sometimes I fear, more than trusting someone, losing them." Vivaan said nothing. He just turned slightly towards her. There was just a breath's distance between them. No confession, no kiss, just silence. The warmth of breath, and that painful possibility. And that's where the story stopped, for another day. Chapter 3: The Guest Who Stayed a Little Longer. Life had now settled into a gentle rhythm. Mornings began with Aarav opening the shutters of Café Sama, Reyansh munching toast behind the counter, and a little later, Vivaan entering like the sun emerging from behind a cloud. He never called it anything, neither friendship nor love, but whatever it was very delicate, very precious, and absolutely true. But one day, a slight wave of calmness came into that tranquility. One day, Thursday. It was a little cold. A new sound echoed through Café Sama. The The door opened. A girl entered, confident, stylish, with a sharp presence. Her name was Neha. "Hey, Aarav," she said, as if this cafe were her home too. Aarav froze for a moment. Then in a soft voice, she spoke. "Neha, you here?" Vivaan stopped his sketching pen. His heart raced, and he saw when Reyansh came running in and said just one word, "Mom." In that moment, everything made sense. Neha, she was his ex-wife. She was Reyansh's mother, and a pang of pain arose in Vivaan's heart. Neither resentment nor jealousy, just a realization. He himself was just another college kid who spent too much time in cafes, a boy trying to build a sham home in the hollow corners of a dilapidated house. That day, Vivaan left without finishing his coffee, and even when he returned to the cafe the next few days, he was a little silent. Reyansh's smile greeted him as before, but a tiredness, a distance, had settled within Vivaan. Aarav noticed and understood. One night, while closing the cafe, Aarav himself started the conversation. "You've become distant, Vyai." Vivaan simply said, "I was just busy." But Aarav knew. He admitted it himself. "It's because of Neha, isn't it?" "She was my past, Vivaan. We married young, we loved each other, but time and circumstances changed. She left. Now she and I are only cordial to Reyansh." Vivaan remained silent. The burden in his heart wasn't Neha's return, but the fear that Aarav had given his heart to someone else before, completely. And now, hiding behind his cup of coffee, Vivaan felt small. Then one day, Vivaan didn't come to the cafe. Reyansh watched the door all day. "Papa, hasn't Vivaan uncle come?" Aarav simply smiled and said, "Maybe he's busy." The next evening, Vivaan returned, a little tired, a little quiet, and as soon as Reyansh saw him, he ran and clung to his legs. "Why didn't you come yesterday?" Vivaan said simply, kneeling down. "I was just a little lonely." Reyansh held Vivaan's face with his tiny fingers and smiled. "I get lonely sometimes too, but being with Papa makes everything okay." And in that moment, Vivaan's heart melted again. That night, Aarav himself gave Vivaan coffee and said softly, "I didn't try to hide anything from you. I just didn't know what we are." Vivaan simply sighed. "I don't know either. But I know one thing. I'm scared of losing you." Aarav looked at him, and for the first time, he placed his fingers near Vivaan's. Neither held his hand nor moved away, just close enough that their heat met, and he said, "Me too." No promises, no grand statements, just a small, silent sigh. And after that, Aarav started opening his heart little more, even in small ways. Now he wouldn't shy away from standing near Vivaan. He wouldn't even look away if his finger touched his. Reyansh would call him uncle, even louder, giggling. And when Neha came to the cafe again, Vivaan didn't leave quickly this time. He just kept solving puzzles with Reyansh, while Aarav dealt with her. This time, it was their moment, and Aarav realized it too. That love never comes with a bang. Sometimes he just waits, slowly, slowly, and does what Vivaan always did, wait patiently. Chapter 4. You two are not like me. You both seem like one of me. Vivaan had never even imagined Aarav outside the cafe. But that Sunday, in the market near the station, amidst the crowds, street food, and small stalls, his eyes suddenly fell on Aarav. Aarav, in a soft gray sweater, seemed completely effortless under the cool sun, and with him was Reyansh, jumping in small circles, holding ice cream in one hand and a soft toy in the other. And in that moment, everything seemed so perfect. It felt like a kiss in Vivaan's heart. It happened. Aarav was laughing, that real, open, uninhibited laughter, and that sound filled Vivaan's heart with pain. He just stopped there, until Reyansh's gaze fell on him, and a scream came out, "Vivaan, uncle!" The next moment, the little boy had grabbed his hand, and Aarav just looked at him with a slight smile. They didn't say much, they just talked about it, about their Sunday habit, their ritual, their little world. And that was what bothered Vivaan the most, because he wasn't a part of that world, and he wanted to be, perhaps more than he dared. But Reyansh broke all the distance. He jokingly insisted that Vivaan come with them, and then the three of them sat in a park. Reyansh was playing like a robot on the grass. Vivaan was on the bench, Aarav beside him. And for a moment, everything went quiet. That silence that only exists when there's understanding, not words, in the middle. Vivaan said softly, "Aarav looks different outside the cafe." More relaxed, more open, and Aarav simply replied, "My reason isn't always about the place. It's about how safe I feel." Safe. This one word struck Vivaan's heart. Perhaps this was what they had created without saying a word. A small place where they both felt safe. And Vivaan blurted out that he wanted to see all versions of Aarav. Aarav just smiled and said he was still learning his own version. That silence was broken by the sound of Reyansh falling. He was running fast and fell after hitting a rock. His knees were bruised. In that moment, without thinking, Vivaan and Aarav both ran towards him. Vivaan picked him up in his arms. There were tears in his eyes. He simply said, "Champ, you're fine. Your robot powers are still intact." And when Aarav sat beside him on his knee, looking at the wound, he looked at Vivaan, not at the child, not even at the knee, just at Vivaan. As if for the first time he understood how much Vivaan really cared. Evening. Inside the cafe. Reyansh fell asleep on the couch after drinking hot chocolate, and Vivaan and Aarav were sitting beside him on the floor, touching their shoulders. Aarav said softly, "Thank you. You're back. You stopped. When I never even asked you to stay." And only one truth came out from Vivaan's heart. "You two are not like me. You both feel like one of my own." Aarav said nothing at that moment. He just rested his head on Vivaan's shoulder. There was no confession, no grand promise, just a tired trust, a hidden satisfaction, and a strange intimacy. That was speaking for itself. This story will continue, so stay tuned. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to BL Stories for more emotional and romantic tales.